Hello, everybody, and welcome into another season preview show here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, I'm joined in by Cooper Krigbaum, who covers the Golden Knights. We also have Paolo here, a new writer here at the Hockey Writers. Also covers the Golden Knights. We're going to cover the season coming up for this team, which I won the Pacific Division last season. After not making the playoffs, which was an interesting time when they didn't make the playoffs and returned back to that dominant team that everyone's used to. So we're going to preview the season and see what changes. Not really a lot of changes in the offseason, although there was a massive one, which they're adding a pretty elite forward in Mitch Marner. So we'll start there with the forwards because that's where the big changes came. So I'll ask both of you guys about this because this is a big addition to the lineup. So start with you, Cooper. Marner coming from the Toronto Maple Leafs. He is, 100-point guy. He hit 100 points for the first time in his career in Toronto. I almost got there the previous season, but he's been part of that core four that everyone knows about in Toronto. But now he's in Vegas. So what do you think about what is going to be his impact on the team? Obviously going to be a top line forward, but what do you think about the addition?
Yeah, obviously this was a headline throughout the entire offseason. Kind of right as the season started this past season, Marner hadn't signed in Toronto. It's Toronto. There are question marks for years before he got drafted, and they're talking about signing him to these massive contracts. But, this was a player that was highly touted on the market. And as it turned out, never actually reached the market, which traded in the sign of trade with the Golden Knights. Vegas is getting a top of the line player. 102 points, like you said, Matthew. This is a very, very, this is not a type of player you get around very often or at all. You're getting a top of the line player, and not only that, you're going to be getting somebody who can also influence those around him. So I think this is going to also elevate a lot of other people's games. Whether that's a guy like Jack Eichel, I don't know how you can bump his game even more. He had a really good season last year as well. But I'm looking at guys like Dorofeev. How can he take a step forward? Obviously, he led the team in goals last season with 35. How can Marner help him? How can Marner help Barbashev? There's so many different questions to ask. It's just kind of absurd. But, this is an all-star player that Vegas is getting, and I think it's really going to show. But kind of like you said, not a whole ton of additions, but I think this might be the biggest in the entire NHL, and I think it's going to be really exciting to see how it all pans out in Vegas next year.
For sure. Paolo, what do you think about Marner? He's been a Maple Leaf his whole career. I don't know. Everyone thought that maybe he wasn't going to leave, but it ended up being Vegas was probably the place he was going to go. What type of impact is he going to make on this team?
I'm really excited to have Marner on this team. I think what Vegas is really after is that they're really after that star power, because Vegas, they finished with 110 points last season. They were one of the Cup favorites. They pretty much mopped the floor with the division. They have one of the deepest forward groups, actually one of the deepest defense groups as well. But when they went up against the Oilers, they kind of just got ran out of the building. Like, I watched several of those games, and it looked like the Knights were on the back pedal for the most part. And I think what they're looking for with Marner, they're looking for that difference maker on top of having Jack Eichel. They kind of need that 1-2 punch of having Marner and Eichel, basically two guys they're hoping can take over a game the same way you got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl doing it for the Oilers. As far as how he's going to impact the team, Cooper covered it. He's going to make everyone around him better. Mitch Marner, the Leafs last season were among the best at shooting percentage. They were one of the best at converting scoring chances into goals, and that's two of the weaknesses from the Golden Knights. I covered that in my first article with the Hockey Writers, that the Knights were among the lower ranked teams when it came to converting on scoring chances and on high danger chances. And I feel like when you got a guy like Marner who's really good at creating chances and maybe scoring goals himself, I think the Knights can really push that up to the next level. And now you're going to have their power play, which was already, I think, a top 5 unit or maybe a top 3 unit last season. Now you're going to have Marner in that. And wow, that's probably going to be one of the best power plays this season, might be the best.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, Marner's probably, I don't want to say the best playmaking winger in the NHL because I got called. I was like, Kucherov is probably the best playmaking winger, but Marner's up there. His assist totals have been pretty big throughout his career. And of course, when you have Austin Matthews on your line that can finish most of the passes, it's pretty good. But he also is now getting Jack Eichel, which is a pretty good guy to finish as well. So I think he's not getting a downgrade with the guy he's going to be playing with. Most likely going to be Eichel, like you said, Cooper. But how can you not put him with him? It's going to be interesting for sure. The other addition was Colton Sissons, coming from the Nashville Predators. He's, of course, not as high end of a guy, but Paolo, I'll stay with you. What do you think about Sissons? I mean, he's one of the top face-off guys, I believe, last season as well with the Predators. Very good penalty killer, a very good bottom six guy. Do you think he could maybe be an underrated addition to this team?
Yeah, it's good you bring up Sissons because that actually ties into one of the weaknesses from the Knights last season. They were only average when it came to the face-offs, and their penalty kill was below average. So adding a guy like Sissons can help shore up those weaknesses, which will be really crucial, especially in the playoffs where you can't have too many weaknesses because that's where your opponents, where in the playoffs, especially in the second round, the conference finals, you're only playing the best of the best, right? If you have that one weakness, they're going to find that and they're going to kill you with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Cooper, you have any other thoughts on Sissons? I mean, came in the Jeremy Lauzon trade. We will talk about him in the defense, but he's one of those guys that you do need for playoffs for sure.
Yeah, I think it was when that transaction happened between Nashville and Vegas, there's a lot of question marks because Vegas actually gained cap in that space, and that was when everyone was talking about Marner. But obviously, we saw the Marner deal happen a couple of days after that. I think this is purely a Nick Wall replacement. I think that they got him for a fraction of the price. He, like you guys kind of hit on, I mean, he's really good at faceoffs. He's really good on the boards, PK, obviously a major emphasis for this team. So I think it's a really good addition. I think he really fills the role that Vegas needs, and he's going to add a lot of physicality as well.
Sure. And, moving to the rest of the forward group, I'll stay with you, Cooper. Any other storylines you're looking at, burning questions? Obviously, most of the guys are coming back. Nick Waugh, pretty big remove, but, you're getting Marner in return. That's probably a massive difference. But he was a very good player for the Golden Knights for a long time here. The rest of the forward group still pretty good. What other storylines are you looking at with the forwards?
Yeah, one player that I have in particular that I think he's going to be a big, I wouldn't say determining factor in the success of the team, because I feel like with a team with Eichel and Martin, like you guys said, it's kind of impossible not to succeed with those kind of players at the top of the lineup. But Tomas Hertl, I think he's kind of been an up and down player. Obviously, popular name, Bay Area, played with the Stars for several seasons, but he only had 61 points in 73 games last year, 32 goals, which on the paper isn't bad. And I think he did have a good season, but I do think there is another element to his game that he can take and that we have seen. He is getting older. Obviously, that's obviously not something no one is aware of. So I think as a second line center, wherever they slot him in the lineup, he's going to have a big role in this season. Kind of like we've been saying, I mean, you can have really good players at the top lineup. You're going to need that depth. We saw how crucial that was during the postseason and the playoffs. Depth wasn't really there. You kind of lacked that star power. And then another player I'm looking at is Brett Howden. He had 23 goals, 40 points last year. I think he really, the sky's the limit. I think he's one of the – it's weird saying this. I think he's like 27, 28. That's considered young on the Golden Knights. So I think as one of the younger guys, I think he could take a step up even more. He really was dynamite in the playoffs as well. Had an OT winner against the Wild in the round one. So I think those are two guys, again, both centers that they could take another leap forward, and it'll be kind of interesting to see how they slot them in the lineup to start the year.
Sure. Paolo, what about you for burning questions, storylines of this forward group? Still pretty strong, and probably obviously got stronger with Marner.
My burning question is, can this group stay healthy? I mean, you mentioned that they missed the playoffs like 2 seasons ago, and that's because they got ravaged by injuries. I mean, the Knights last season were actually average when it came to injury luck, but they've never been on the higher injuries. We already know that, I mean, it's kind of ironic that their captain's Mark Stone and he's always injured. So what would happen if several of their players also start missing a lot of games? Like what if Hurdle maybe gets hurt, or Carlson, or maybe like the bottom 6 players right there. I mean, Vegas, they really built on depth, so missing 1 or 2 players probably won't hurt them as much, but missing players continuously, like never being healthy for most part of the season, is kind of like gonna slow this team down a little bit. So yeah, I'm just wondering if this team can stay healthy for the most part.
That is huge. I mean, the Golden Knights have dealt with quite a few injuries. Like you mentioned with Stone, he's probably missed. Has he ever had a full season in the NHL? I don't think he has. And I mean,
I can't recall. I don't know. Maybe back in Ottawa.
Yeah, probably. That's probably the last time he was fully healthy. But yeah, we'll see with him. I mean, injuries are going to be something that's going to be. I mean, everyone deals with them. I don't think any team is fully healthy all season long. But yeah, that definitely for the big guys. But the Golden Knights have been able to figure it out. I mean, they have their big players that seem to always step up, even with the injuries. So, and adding Marner is going to be a big thing with that too. All right, Paolo, talk about the defense. Pietrangelo is a big guy that's not going to be playing this season. And he takes up so many minutes. I think 20 to 25 minutes for sure. What do you think? How are they going to kind of replace him? I mean, they didn't get anyone that really can. Should probably be by committee. Is that the biggest storyline going to this season?
Yeah. Of course, it's hard to replace a guy like Pietrangelo. And I mean, like the generic response is like, oh, everyone's going to have to step up. No one player is going to replace Pietrangelo. For me, my biggest concern is that Pietrangelo is like a right-handed shot. And without him, I think the only right-handed shots they'll have left on defense would be Zach Whitecloud and Caden Korchuk. And I think they got Coughlin. So I don't know if they're going to – I mean, power play wasn't really much of an issue for them last season, and I think in Pietrangelo's spot, they're just going to have Shea Theodore's probably going to man the first power play unit, and then they're probably going to have Hannifin in the second unit. And I mean, they got Riley Smith back, so he can be on that defensive on the back end there. But for me, it's mainly a locker room thing. Like Pietrangelo's one of the vets. He won a cup with St. Louis. He won another one with Vegas. He's maybe a potential Hall of Famer, so it's kind of hard to replace a guy like that, especially in the locker room.
Yeah, I think. I mean, he was with the Golden Knights. He's been with the Golden Knights for quite a while, and of course won a cup with them too. Cooper, you have anything else to add for the defense? I mean, Pietrangelo is obviously the big guy, not there, but. Shea Theodore is probably going to be the guy that's going to have to step up. I mean, he's been really good as a top 4, but he hasn't been the guy there. So what do you think about the defense?
Right. Yeah, you kind of hit on that pretty well. It's no one on the Vegas Golden Knights have really acclaimed that number 1 defense yet. Pietrangelo was that last year, so I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see how they slot those players in. And I think one of the bigger things that I look at is, okay, like we'll talk about Shea Theodore stepping up, XYZ, but if he's moving up, that means everyone else is moving up as well. So it's kind of like a domino effect. I see it. But another player I'm looking at is Caden Korchuk. I think he just signed an extension, 4 years, $3.25 million, I believe. I think he's only 24 years old. He only played 40 games last year. They're going to be betting big on him. I think it's not a crazy contract, so it's not really a ton of risk for Kelly McCrimmon, but I do think there is a bit of a gamble here to have him pan out. And if he does, that's great. And you now have a top 6 defenseman, maybe even a top 4 within the next couple of years. So I think they're going to find out a lot about him this year. whether he can stay at the NHL level for a sustained amount of time. But like you guys kind of hit on, I mean, this is going to be probably one of the big emphasis throughout the entire season. And it's going to be really fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, they're still pretty good defense. It's not like they're horrible. But yeah, there's going to be some question marks. It's still pretty deep. There are guys that are going to have to step up for sure, take up those minutes on power play, penalty kill, all that. So we'll see who does that. And maybe there's a young guy that we're not even talking about yet that might step up, or even a guy like Ben Hutton. Who knows? He's still on the team. We'll see. All right, Cooper, I'll stay with you for the goaltending. This is Adin Hill's crease, really. I mean, they got Akira Schmid last season, but now he is the backup. So what do you think about this tandem? Is it going to be starter backup thing? Schmid's a good goalie, but he hasn't really established himself even as a backup yet. What do you think about the tandem?
Yeah, I think a lot of Golden Knights fans might have a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth from Adin Hill's performance in the playoffs. I think obviously we know what he's capable of. We saw that in the regular season. 32 wins, had a 2.47 goals against average. He's a really good goaltender when he's on, but I think it's the consistency that a lot of fans and people around the NHL are going to be looking at this year. This is going to be the start of a 6-year contract with Vegas. I believe it's worth 6.2. Somewhere in that ballpark. So, I mean, this is a lot of money for your goaltender to the future, really. So I think consistency is going to be key for him. And I also think, kind of going back to what we were just talking about, the defense, how they perform in front of him. I mean, when you have a guy like Alex Pietrangelo in front of you, you're probably pretty confident that he's going to block a couple shots for you. But now you don't have that this year. So I think it's going to be a lot of adapting for him. But kind of like you hit on with Akira Schmid, he hasn't really developed himself into an NHL goaltender, let alone be a backup. So I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see how he plays in that role. I don't necessarily think he has big shoes to fill. Ilya Samsonov, he was a serviceable backup, but he didn't steal games away like Adin Hill can. So I think it's going to be a pretty solid tandem. I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see how they balance the two. Because if I was head coach, I mean, I think Hill probably gets the nod a lot of the time. Yeah. But I think it's also going to be interesting. I think this is a point we'll bring up later. But if Schmid if he's not doing well, do they have a plan to maybe trade for someone or a guy like Carl Lindbom in the NHL to come up? So I think that's another interesting point. They do have that depth at the bottom, but will they need to use it early on is the question. But I like the tandem, but I do think consistency is going to be the key for both of them.
Sure. I mean, Schmid's shown some flashes in the NHL, I mean, with New Jersey as well. So he's, again, a very young goaltender too. So, I mean, you don't know what'll happen with him. I could turn into a 1A, 1B, but we'll have to see. Paolo, any other thoughts about the goaltending or about anything?
Yeah. Well, you guys pretty much hit on a lot of it. I just wanted to say that I was pretty high on Schmid. Actually, I'm still a little bit high on Schmid. So he's young. He's like, I think 25. And when you're a goaltender, you might as well, that's like being 20 years old as a goaltender. Yeah, that's true. But the thing about goaltending is that it's such, I think out of all the positions, it's the most psychological. It's the most mental. Like you can be like really hot for one season or for a stretch. And then the next season, you're like, I mean, you saw what happened with Georgiev in Colorado, right? He was really good for like 2 seasons, and then he was awful in like the last 2 seasons that they traded him away for Blackwood. So I don't know. It depends with Hill. I mean, I'm confident in Hill. I mean, I also have to be, being a Canadian, that he's going to be on Team Canada. Yeah. I think he can be that guy. It's for me, it's more so a question if he can be good enough to beat the elite teams in the playoffs. Like Cooper said, like, you know, he pretty much got, you know, schooled by Edmonton there last season. It wasn't entirely his fault. Edmonton was just outplaying Vegas for the most part. And I don't know if Schmid has that experience to kind of like step in that, you know, that critical role and be like, oh, they're going to put all of this on me. And I don't know if that's going to be good on his development as a young player. There's still a couple of, you know, veterans out there. So if you know, Hill gets injured, God forbid, they're probably going to sign someone or bring someone up from the AHL, as Cooper said.
I mean, like I say, Carl Lindbom is not a bad goaltender to have as your 3. So, I mean, It could be a pretty good depth for the goalies, so we'll see. But Hill has shown him, of course, he's won a cup, to be a good starter. So we'll see if he can stay consistent in that role for sure. All right, let's move to the division because, of course, they won the division. Do they still stack up as being the best? Cooper, is that where they are? Are they still the best in the division, or are they kind of? I don't know if they, of course, haven't taken a step back because they added Mitch Marner. Are they still the best?
I think it's a tough question because I think it's kind of impossible to measure now. You kind of like to look at if any of the teams make moves. Obviously, Rossi just re-signed with the Wild the other day, but looking at some of the moves the other teams made, like the Kings, me personally, I don't think the Kings got better. I mean, I know they made a lot of signings for better or worse. We'll see. Oilers, the Oilers are going to be the Oilers. You're going to have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But I do think there are a lot of question marks within the Pacific Division. I think the Ducks got better. And I think a lot of their players in their young core are going to take a step forward. Same with the Canucks. Obviously, we were talking about this before the show, Matthew. Lots of question marks, but if some of those can get answered, at least a few check marks, I think they're in a pretty good position. So I think it's a lot of question marks. Do I think Vegas is one of the better teams in the division? Yes, I do think that. I mean, when you bring in a guy like Marner, it's kind of impossible to get worse. But when you lose a guy like Pietrangelo, I guess it kind of balances out. But for the flashiness of the strip that is Vegas, you get one of the really good players in the NHL, like you said, Matthew, earlier, maybe the best playmaking winger behind Kucherov. So I think it's going to be kind of a toss-up between Edmonton and Vegas. Then again, we don't know what injuries are going to look like. We don't know how the season's really going to go. But if I had to guess, they might be running it back as Pacific Division champions, or this is going to be a second-place team. But I do still think this will be a 100-point-plus team in 25-26.
Paolo, you agree with that? Is that where the Golden Knights are?
Yeah. I would say I'd like to say the Golden Knights are the best team in the division. I mean, it's either between them and the Oilers, right? And then the Kings are kind of like in the third place right there. For me, the biggest questions would be how well have the other teams improved? Because that also hinges on how many points Vegas is going to get and where they're going to finish. Because I think last season Vegas finished 19-5-2 against the division. So they pretty much owned almost everyone in that division. And that's because you have teams like Calgary, San Jose, Anaheim. Like Vancouver took a big step back last season. Like there were like a lot of teams there that Vegas was just 1 or 2 steps above. But now Anaheim is supposedly going to get better. Like there was a fan poll from the Athletic recently, and the Ducks were received the most votes to be the most improved team because of all the moves that they made, right? And then the Sharks last season, they still finished, I think last. I think they finished last. They finished last in offense and defense. Yeah. But they have a nice young team there. Macklin Celebrini showed a lot of promise. Will Smith. So if they take a step up, they're going to be better and take some wins away from Vegas. And then Vancouver, I think Vancouver can be better. I mean, they have a new coach in Adam Foote. I expect him to bring a more defensive, tough-nosed approach to that team. They were already good. And then Thatcher Demko is probably going to be better if he's healthier because he was playing injured last season. Elias Pettersson was injured last season. I mean, talk about injuries. Vancouver was in Vegas' shoes last season because they were dealing with all those injuries. And can never count Calgary out. Calgary is usually that team when people think they're going to be bad, they're going to be good. Yeah. And I'm looking at the point totals, and people think Calgary is going to be one of the 5 worst teams in the NHL. So who knows? Maybe they're going to surprise teams again. But if Vegas does stay healthy, I think they're the best. They're the deepest team in that division. I think they can be the best team in that division.
I mean, I want the Pacific Division to be a bloodbath type division again because it used to be. It used to be so tough to win games in this division. And it's kind of gone a little bit different. But you got so many young teams now at the bottom that eventually they'll start creeping their way up. And I do agree with the Canucks. I think they're being a little underestimated. A lot of people are kind of writing them off as being not good again, and I don't agree. I mean, of course, I'm a writer for the Canucks, so I do think they're going to be better too. I agree with that. So it's going to be interesting. But the Golden Knights are going to be at flirting with the top of the division for sure. They're still a really good team. And then Marner, of course, adds to that. Not saying if he's not, I think he's going to pan out here. It's not like he's all of a sudden not be a good player. So we'll see how it all plays out. It's going to be fun within the division this year, I think. All right, quick fire round. And this is a bunch of questions, but 1 or 2 sentence answers for these. So not a big thing. So we'll start with the biggest storyline coming up this season. We talked about a few of them, but Cooper, what do you think is the biggest one going into this season?
I'd like to say defenseman, but I think the biggest storyline for a broader perspective is going to be Mitch Marner. How does he perform? How does he influence the ones around him? Can he get 100 points? Will he mesh well with Jack Eichel? There's a variety of questions that we could go into with that, but I do think it's going to be the impact Mitch Marner has on this team next year.
Paolo, what about you?
I hate to say it, but I think it might be outside of the Marner thing. I think it might be Jack Eichel's impending contract expiry. I just hope that doesn't take away from the team, and they're going to be talking about it all the time. It's like, oh, Eichel's contract. Yeah. I just hope it doesn't distract from the team or from what the Knights do.
That's very true. I mean, that's another one of the big ones that everyone's talking about. Connor McDavid being the other. 2 massive ones that are going to be big money contracts. I think they're both re-signing. I don't think they're going to free agency, but the longer it goes, the more the questions will be for sure. All right, Paolo, I'll start with you for this one. Breakout stars. Who's going to break out this season?
Oh, that's a tough one. You know what? Maybe this is just wishful thinking on my part, but I'm going to say Akira Schmid. Maybe as a backup, he's gonna ideally he's probably gonna push Adin Hill for that starting job. Maybe he's gonna really shine on the games that he's gonna be on. There's gonna be a lot of back-to-backs now because of the more condensed schedule, because of the winter break. So there's gonna be more chances for Akira Schmid to go up there and be like, yeah, I'm ready for this.
It's a good one. I like that. Cooper, what about you?
I think an answer that I think will get a lot of attention to start the year, just especially because of the nature of the defense, is going to be Caden Korchak. 24 years old. We talked about him earlier. He's going to be put into a big role, whether he's ready for it or not. I'm excited to see what he can do, and I think the Golden Knights are too.
Yeah, I like that too. Paolo, next one, other side. This is bounce back. Who needs to bounce back this season?
Not necessarily bounce back, but like as Cooper touched upon, I'd like to see more consistency from Hardle, especially when he's your second line center. I had him in fantasy last season, and I know frustratingly, just as the fans do, that this guy was hot and cold. He had long stretches where he was not putting any points on the score sheet, and then there were a couple of stretches down there towards the end of the season where he suddenly got hot. So, I'd like to see him distribute that scoring a little bit more evenly.
Yeah, and Cooper, who needs to bounce back?
I'm going to go Ivan Barbashev. Similar to Adin Hill, I think a lot of fans have a sour taste in their mouth. Only a goal and a point, 2 points in the playoffs. He did have a solid regular season with 51 points in 70 games, but as the primary net driver on the team, possibly even on the first line with Jack Eichel and Mitch Marner, they're going to need him to be on the top of his game, and I think he'll be a big bounce back candidate for this year.
Yeah, those 2 good guys. If they both do, I think the team will be fine. All right, let's to some X factors. This can be a player. This can be a situation. You can kind of choose where you want to go with this. Cooper, what for an X factor?
I'm going to go with 2. The first one's going to be Riley Smith's and William Karlsson's chemistry. We know how great friends they are off the ice. I think on the ice, that's going to be a big add for the team. Obviously, they re-signed Smith to a 1 year, $2 million contract. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they play. I'd imagine they're going to be on the same line for a majority, if not the entire season, if that all works out. But I also think another X factor is going to be the Vegas Golden Knights, how they do on home ice. Obviously, they were really good on home ice last year. Can they contain that? Can they sustain that? My apologies. Can they keep that up? I think that's going to be an interesting part of the season too.
Sure. Paolo, what about you for an X factor?
Yeah, sure. I'll give two as well. For the players, I think it's the bottom of the defensemen, which will be Korchuk and Lauzon. As we mentioned, that Pietrangelo's absence means everyone's kind of going to move up. So when everyone's moving up, like the bottom four, mainly the bottom pairing guys, it's a lot is going to depend on them, especially because of the roles they play. Lauzon is like a physical type of defenseman, and Vegas, they kind of rank low when it came to hits. And I know that's not the only indication of how physical you are as a team, but especially in the playoffs when things get a little bit rough, you want a guy like Lauzon out there to like set the pace. You want the team to be the more physical team instead of having to adjust and be as physical as the other team, because that's not going to work out well for you. And the other X factor is how well Vegas can win 1-goal games. I mean, it's amazing that the Knights had 110 points when they had a losing record in 1-goal games. I think only Tampa Bay and New Jersey had a worse record among playoff teams last season, and they lost in round one. So, if the Knights can learn how to win 1-goal games better, maybe that's going to go a long way in how they can win close playoff games.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think that is interesting. That's an interesting stat. I didn't realize that the Golden Knights weren't very good in 1-goal games. And that's what you need to be. Most of them are going to be that in the playoffs, although there are some blowouts, it seems, lately. But, they're more tighter games. You need to be able to win those. All right, let's shift to the prospects. And, Golden Knights, it's well documented. They trade them all away. But, Paolo, I'll start with you. Is there anyone that you can kind of think of that could make the team out of training camp? You're not really expecting to. There's probably not a lot of candidates for this, but do you have anyone?
Maybe from the defense, namely because they need a right-handed shot defenseman. I don't know if Noah Ellis is a right-handed shot defenseman, but if they kind of like need someone out there, especially if they get injuries, I think he can kind of like get called up.
Yeah, that's a good one. Cooper, what about you? Anyone that comes to mind?
Yeah, I got two. I think the first one, and to be honest, I think the only prospect that garners nearly the only attention for Vegas is Trevor Connolly. Do I think there's a spot on the roster for him? No. I think this is a very depth-filled team, and I think even if he has a really good training camp, he belongs in the AHL. He only played 6 games last year after college. So I think the AHL is where he needs to play, get some professional experience without being in the NHL. And then I think we kind of touched on him earlier, Carl Lindblom. I think he's kind of an interesting name. Obviously, that backup goaltending, it looks like it's penciled in now. Maybe they kind of flip-flop that. We're not really too sure about that, but I think those two could be interesting possibilities entering training camp.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone who's going to make a big surprise, but you never know. Training camps are interesting with these guys. It could happen. All right. Apart from those guys, the Golden Knights have added a few different prospects in the drafts lately. Cooper, who should everyone be watching this season for prospects?
Yeah, Connolly's obviously going to be one of them. They're going to see first round next to his name. Typically, that doesn't happen with Golden Knight prospects, so that's going to be big for the AHL. Obviously, the Silver Knights haven't been the best team in the AHL recently, so I think that would be a good addition for him to learn around those guys. And I think another name at North Dakota this year is going to be Abram Wimby. I had the chance to speak with him, and I do think that he has a solid chance at becoming one of their top defensemen. I believe he had 20 points last year in 40 games. As a sophomore in college hockey, the ever-growing nature that is college hockey, it was a solid season. I think he is really going to look forward to taking that next step forward. Still not signed. Vegas did try signing him this past offseason, I should say. So I think they obviously have their eyes on him, and I do think that he is a name that they want to get into the organization, into the AHL, and have that depth option. As a 7th-round pick, it's a pretty cool story. But, yeah, I think those two are going to be names to watch for the season.
For sure. Paolo, what about you for prospects? I say the Golden Knights, they don't traditionally keep their blue chippers, but there are some guys that they do still have a prospect pool. So who do you want? Who should everyone be watching?
Maybe David Edstrom up in the middle. I think he had a pretty decent season with the national team up in Sweden. They won I think silver in the World Junior Championships, and he had a pretty solid campaign there. Not really too familiar with a lot of the prospects in Vegas, but he's one of them that I actually know firsthand. So it has to be worth watching.
There you go. All right, this one could be an easy one, although it might be a new person because they've added a 100-point guy. Paolo, who's leading the team in scoring in forward and defense? Defense probably will change because now Pietrangelo's not there.
Oh, well, I mean, and forwards, I mean, assuming they play a full season, it's either Eichel or Marner, right? You know what? I'm going to go with Eichel because he is in a contract season. And assuming the Knights still don't sign him, I mean, hopefully they sign him by the time the season starts. But I think Eichel's gonna want to prove out there, especially with McDavid and his contract situation too. He's gonna want out there and be like, I'm gonna set a record-breaking contract and I'm gonna put up a lot of points.
There you go.
And on defense, defense, it's gonna be tough. I'd like to say Shea Theodore, but I'm gonna maybe say Noah Hannafin. But it's not going to be like he's going to score 60 points, 70 points. Maybe it's a couple of guys are going to be scoring in the 40s, and Hannafin's probably going to play the most games, so he's going to get the most points.
All right, Cooper, what about you for forwards and defense?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the in my opinion, the clear-cut obvious one, Mitch Marner. I think it's a toss-up between him and Eichel, but I think when you bring in a guy like Marner, obviously I would like to say there's pressure on him. I think there's pressure on every player in the NHL to perform, but I don't think it's nearly enough, or should I say as much pressure as he was under in Toronto with the media and whatnot. I mean, you miss the net and you're all over social media. So I think he's gonna be a lot more relaxed this year, and I do think that might benefit him. And I think it's gonna be kind of interesting to see how Vegas will reap from those benefits of having not a ton of pressure. And I think the defensive side of things, I'm going to go Shea Theodore. He had 57 points last season in only 67 games. He got hurt at the Four Nations. So I think a full 82-game season from him could benefit him. He's never played a full 82-game season in his career, but I do think that might be a possibility this season if he's able to stay healthy. And I do think he'll lead the defense in points if that happens.
Yeah, that's a big question, is that does he stay healthy? If he stays healthy, definitely is capable of it. Very talented defenseman. Actually, he's from my hometown, which is interesting. I was born in Aldergrove, and it's great that they actually say he's from Aldergrove now. It used to be that they always said he was from Langley. That's a township. But I've loved him since he was drafted because he played minor or AAA. Just down the street from me, so that was pretty cool. All right, let's finish the show with bold prediction, hot take. I love these because, well, who doesn't love bold predictions? So, Cooper, what is your bold prediction or hot take for the Golden Knights this season?
I think there's a lot of obvious ones here. I'm going to go with Pavel Dorofeev. Scores 40 goals this year. He had 35 last year. Obviously a surprise. No one really expected him to do that. He didn't really have a great playoff campaign. Was hurt here and there. Was back and forth with the lineup. But I think he gets 40 goals this year. I don't think he's going to be a line mate of Mitch Marner or Jack Eichel, but I do think having potentially those two players on the same line will have teams focusing on that line big time, and then that'll make the rest of the lineup have a little bit more flexibility with the matchups on the ice. So I think he scores 40 goals. I think he has a really successful campaign, and I think this is potentially the start of a really cool storyline within Vegas.
There you go. Hey, he kind of slowed down in the playoffs. He wasn't scoring as much as – he was hurt too, right?
He was in and out of the lineup. He was hurt, and then he came back, didn't really do a whole ton. But I think for the entire Golden Knights, it was not the best postseason, you could say, but it's what happens.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Paolo, let's finish it with bold prediction.
You know what? I'll double down on Jack Eichel. I think Jack Eichel will score 50-plus goals, and he's going to be rewarded with a record-breaking contract. I'm going to say around $15 million annual average value, something like that. which a contract with Connor McDavid will probably break, depending on who gets signed first. But I mean, if McDavid gets signed first, maybe they're gonna sign Eichel to $1 million more. So
yeah,
that's my bold pick.
All right, yeah, he's definitely changed back to that type of player that everyone was hoping he would be in Buffalo. So that's a big thing. I think he is capable of doing it. We'll see what type of money he gets for doing whatever he does this season. All right. Well, that's another season preview in the books. Thanks, Paolo. Thanks, Cooper, for coming on the show and talking Golden Knights as we get into this new season coming up. It's been a very long off season, so we're happy to be doing getting closer and closer to the season starting. But make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We've got great preview content from the Golden Knights team here. We got all the other teams as well, and all throughout the season. Make sure checking everything out at the site on YouTube and our Substack newsletters as well. But until our next preview, we will see you next time.